Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog for the first and the last time during the ATP finals, because it is final time for the last time this year on this channel, previewing and predicting a final. Where does the time go? But here we are. It is Dominic Thiem versus Stefanos Tsitsipas in the ATP finals final, and I'm going to give you an idea of what to expect, and I can't guarantee that I will have the correct prediction, but I'm going to think on my feet a bit. Do bear with me. I don't film on Sundays, therefore I have to do this tonight. Therefore, Thiem versus Zverev finished hardly an hour ago, and therefore I think I know where I'm going with this prediction, but I won't know entirely for sure until I've gone through my preview and have actually made the solid predictions. So this could be an interesting one. I actually meant to be here earlier today because I'd thought about doing a preview and predictions video for the semi-finals. I chickened out at the last minute, and if you heard me on the radio yesterday, you would have heard me calling Tsitsipas to upset Federer, so missed a trick there clearly, but hopefully we can bring some of that form into this final video. Before I start, I want to say that I think the tournament's been fantastic. I think some people were a bit concerned at the beginning when I think we had four straight sets matches, that this was going to be another of those washout tournaments where the courts are playing so quickly and players are winning so fast and there's no drama. But actually we've had endless storylines here. There's been so much going on. The tennis, for the most part, has been really high quality, and the mentalities have been strong as well. And I think the guys that have kept their composure the best are the two that we now have lined up for the final. So this could get really interesting. Now, the tournament has been so good and I've enjoyed it so much that I think at some point next week I'll come back and do some sort of review video. I don't know whether I'll do it in Q&A formats or just pre-plan it myself, but I think the tournament has delivered and deserves a deeper look, especially throwing it forward to next year. But for now, in the allotted time that we have, we're going to take a look at these two guys, Thiem and Tsitsipas, what they've done to make the stage, and who has the best shot at coming out on top. So let's start with the journey of Stefanos Tsitsipas, who is the lowest ranked player by 1 spot in this final. He's the world number 6 and was seeded number 6 as well. Notable about both players is that they were the dominant players in their groups. Each of them picked up 2 straight wins to solidify their place in the semi-finals, and then both of them actually lost the match that didn't do anything to affect really their position in the semis. So all well and good for both guys. Tsitsipas started out against Daniil Medvedev, his rival, with whom he's had a few spicy encounters, let's put it that way. He'd never won prior to this. I think it was 5-love down in the head-to-head, but there's been a real aura of confidence and composure around Tsitsipas this week that I found really impressive. Started in this match against Medvedev, which he won 7-6, 6-4. Very composed. While I'm thinking on my feet and I don't have my match notes in front of me, I can't draw out specifically what impressed me particularly in this match, but we know the way Tsitsipas plays. Big serves, coming to the nets at the first opportunity. But I feel throughout his stay in London, he's really made himself a force to be reckoned with at the baseline. I think particularly in his most recent match, his footwork was incredible. And we might as well race through this because I'm going to have more to say about the semi-final than the group stages. So in the group stage, he defeated Medvedev 7-6, 6-4, Alexander Zverev, the number 7 seed, 6-3, 6-2, and then he lost narrowly to Rafael Nadal 6-7, 6-4, 7-5. Nadal at that point believed he still had a chance to progress to the semis. Well, correct that, he did have a chance to progress to the semis, but Medvedev ended his hopes, so that was still an intense encounter. What to say of Tsitsipas' group stage performance? I just think he looked really confident, and there's been a maturity about Tsitsipas this season on the tour, particularly from the halfway point, that has been quite different to what he's shown us in previous years. Sometimes his mentality has been an issue, but he now, I feel, has the head game to go with the physical game that he's always had for a number of years. The serve and volley game, the ability with the one-handed backhand, the slick, fluid shots. I think that he's completing the package at the moment. And it's been deeply impressive in London, even though he lost that match against Nadal. What really stood out to me there is he kept it deeply competitive down the wire. It was a 2-hour 43-minute clash, I believe, and he didn't have a single break point. And so you think, okay, so he didn't make a breakpoint opportunity, therefore he can't have been that close to the win. But the thing is, this guy has been moving on so effortlessly. He doesn't dwell on things, whether it's something he's done well or something that's not gone well. He barely reacts. He just shrugs it off like water off his back and goes on to the next thing, maintains his plan, and against Nadal to get so close to the victory despite not having any break points. He used his serve to phenomenal effect. These conditions in London, very fast, aiding the big serves and the 1-2 punches, which I will come to again when I talk about Thiem and Tsitsipas as a two and what they've both done well so far in London. So it was a strong round robin showing for Tsitsipas, and then obviously he came up against Federer in the semi-finals, won that match 6-3, 6-4. The reason I saw that one going the way it did, well, there were a number of reasons, really. From Federer's side of the net, this is a position he's been in before. The last two semi-finals at the ATP finals that he's played in, he's been up against a big hitting underdog, much younger than himself, and he's not been able to handle the pressure of the occasion and being the player that's widely expected to win. Same thing happened. It was deja vu for Federer. I mean, it was Zverev he lost to the last time, Goffin the time before, and it's hard to think that that wasn't crossing his mind before the match. I think Tsitsipas, on the other hand, just has that assurance. Again, he was so convincing in the round robin stage. He's got a good set of people around him. I noticed that Patrick Mouratoglou, Serena Williams' coach, at whose academy he's trained, has been with him this week alongside his dad. I think he's just got these good voices surrounding him and this absolute belief that he can beat whoever he wants to. There's almost a tinge of arrogance about Tsitsipas at the moment after that epic match against Nadal where he was on court for nearly 3 hours. He said in press afterwards that he'd kept stuff in reserve and that he wanted to win that match but wasn't going to die on the court for it, in his words. So he's very sure of himself, and from those early stages in that match against Federer, it was obvious that he truly believed he could outright win this match. He did capitalize on slow starts from Federer at the beginning of the first set and the beginning of the second. Federer opted to receive, which was a kind of a fatal blow to him in the end because he didn't break through. However, it's easy to forget that he came close to breaking through. Federer actually had breakpoint in the first game, which Tsitsipas saved with aggressive big hitting. So Tsitsipas made his intentions known from the get-go, and Federer couldn't find a way through because all aspects of Tsitsipas' game were so unsung. So the serve was getting him out of trouble once again, as at the Australian Open beginning of this year. Federer had difficulties with breakpoint conversion against Tsitsipas, who was stretching Federer out, who was nailing the 1-2 punches. And I think particularly impressive as well was the way Tsitsipas was rallying from the baseline. As the match went on, actually net approaches weren't working quite so well for him, and therefore he was hanging back at the baseline a bit more, and his footwork and the way he was able to stay balanced and readjust and get into position was really working well for him. Federer had played flawlessly against Djokovic. Part of what had won him the rallies there was his use of the backhand slice in constructing the points and getting the ball where he wanted it. Tsitsipas, who plays so similarly to Federer, was taking a lot of Federer's techniques and using them himself. He was using the squash shot, he was using the backhand slice, but most of all, he was eating up Federer's pace liking the angles that were coming from Federer. And because he was so at home on the court, he was more confident to switch things up as well. Federer seemed really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Apprehensive to hit down the line. Tsitsipas, when he changed it up, he did it with more conviction. He was striking the ball closer to the net. And that's why he came through 6-3, 6-4. Even when Federer had break points at the back end of both sets, I didn't think he was going to take them just because of how convinced of himself Tsitsipas has looked this week. So that's enough on Tsitsipas for now, because we're on a time limit, and we'll move on to Thiem, and then we'll talk a bit more about them both. So Dominic Thiem has 2 round-robin victories over 2 rather big names. So he beat Federer and Djokovic back-to-back. Djokovic obviously lost twice in the group stage. For those of you who think I'm an arrogant know-it-all, I was not expecting Djokovic to lose twice in the group stage, so we'll talk a bit more about that next week, maybe. But Thiem deeply impressive and stepped up to get those wins. I can't comment as much on the Federer victory because I have taken in-depth, as in like notes for every point, match notes throughout this week, except for the matches that were played last Sunday. So they were the only ones I didn't see, but I've seen everything from Monday and taken in-depth notes on them. So the Federer match I can't really comment on. I heard that Thiem was pretty strong and Federer threw in the odds terrible game to kind of come out the wrong end of a close encounter. And I think that's why Thiem was going to be very dangerous here. He's a very solid player. That's why he's so great on clay courts, because that's an endurance surface. And what Thiem's done really well is transferred, adjusted even his game so that it transfers well across surfaces. People were writing Thiem off here because it's an indoor hard court, but if you've been watching Thiem throughout the year, he's been working on his game to put it in a position where it can thrive on all surfaces. So he's been taking some of the top spin off at the O2, which we particularly saw in his match with Djokovic, which I honestly did not expect him to win. From a set down, Djokovic took the tie break. Thiem had his opportunities, was going after the ball, and then he made 1 or 2 errors at the back end of the tie break that cost him. And he got a tiny bit frustrated. The only time I can really recall seeing Thiem getting frustrated this tournament, to be honest. But he regrouped really quickly, and to get that win, he just full on went after his shots time and time and time again. Drilled the forehands and backhands deep, took the height off them, so was keeping them slick. And that's the way to beat the kind of player that Djokovic is. But Djokovic is not the kind of player that Tsitsipas will be. So moving on, lost his last group stage match to Matteo Berrettini, who was already eliminated 7-6, 6-3. I wasn't taking too much away from that. There was no reason really for Thiem to overexert himself, and also he was quite under the weather that day. I think he had a cold or something. So I mean, credit to Berrettini for getting the win. He's had a tremendous season coming from outside the top 50 to inside the top 10. Glad he got to go away with a victory, but we can strike that match as far as how it affects Thiem now is concerned. I don't think we take anything from that at all, which brings us to today's semi-final, which Thiem won in straight sets, like Tsitsipas, 7-5, 6-3 over Zverev. I don't think Thiem was all that impressive today, to be honest, in terms of his physical execution. It was nothing on the Djokovic match, and to be honest, he played potentially the best match of his career in that Djokovic match, so it's going to take some beating that. But by that, I mean he wasn't striking the ball in the same way as in the Djokovic match. He didn't have the same conviction, he didn't have the same consistency in the long rallies, and really Zverev should have taken that opening set. Thiem was not making many first serves. I think at one point at least his first serve percentage was below the 50% mark, and Zverev wasn't capitalizing. But you know, Thiem and his solidness, once again, putting the ball in play and making Zverev do the work. So Thiem was serving first, which meant that as there were no breaks of serve, he was 6-5 up, and that put the scoreboard pressure on Zverev, who could not mirror Thiem in terms of the way he was composing himself on court. And I'll say it again, Tsitsipas and Thiem have been exemplary in terms of the way they've composed themselves and controlled their emotion throughout this tournament. Zverev gave away that final game of the first set. Thiem did well with his depth to draw the errors, that every time something went wrong, Zverev turned, had a go at his team, and then took the longest of deep breaths before his second serve on the very last point of the set before he double faulted. So that was a giveaway, and it was something that Thiem definitely built on. I felt towards the end of the match he was striking with more authority, with more belief, with more control. And if he can bring that sort of form to Tsitsipas, we should get a really good match. Maybe it's a good thing for Thiem that he hasn't peaked ahead of that match, so that Tsitsipas has less of an idea of what to expect. But all in all, I think that Thiem did what he needed to do to get past Zverev. And I think that he did well at problem solving. There were several patterns that kept coming up during the match. So, for example, Thiem was going for a few 1-2 punches that involved a wide serve and then an off forehand into the other half of the court. At the beginning of the match, Zverev was sending his returns to Thiem's feet so that he didn't have the control on the forehand to put it away, but Thiem was getting quicker at adjusting for that, and he was just anticipating things a bit better. I think his anticipation as well did force Zverev into some errors. He missed some smashes and some putaways that he should have got because potentially he was a bit distracted by the fact that Thiem, who'd been on the stretch, was already covering the line. So I think that Thiem did well to compose himself and thought his way through that match as well. And for the time being, I'll wrap up on that. So we come to the final, Tsitsipas versus Thiem. And honestly, it's a really tough one to call. I feel like I say this a lot, but if you look at the stats, it's pretty 50-50. Looking at the head-to-head, Thiem, I believe, has the advantage. Do I have the head-to-head here? Yes, I do. So Thiem is 4 wins up to Tsitsipas 2. Their most recent meeting came this year in Beijing in the final. So that was a 500 event, I believe. Yes, 500. And Thiem was the winner in 3 sets, 3-6, 6-4, 6-1. Of their 6 meetings, 4 of them have come on hard courts. Thiem even has won 3 of them. Tsitsipas has just won the 1. Now that was their last meeting in 2018, which was the meeting before Beijing. So Tsitsipas won that match 6-3, 7-6. So it's not like Tsitsipas is so far behind on the head-to-head that Thiem's the heavy favourite here. And anyway, Tsitsipas beat Medvedev in his first match here, was 5-love down on the head-to-head. So I'd probably have been making a prediction on this without even looking at the head-to-head, because I just get certain feelings now when I've been watching tennis for a while and have been analysing deeply, such as that feeling that Tsitsipas was going to beat Federer. I didn't have enough of a feeling on the Thiem versus Zverev match to make a prediction, hence why you haven't seen me already today. That one was pretty 50-50 as well, to be fair. So what can I say about this matchup? Well, both of these two have a few things in common. They've both already beaten Roger Federer this tournament, which means that they've both already beaten an opponent who hits flat with a one-handed backhand. So that's going to prepare them nicely, I think, for this encounter with each other. What else can I say? Both of them lost in the round robin stage in a match that didn't mean anything to them. So both of them have been very much focused when it matters for them. And one of the things I often use in these scenarios to make a prediction is history and looking back at what's happened in recent history, because as I've said time and time again, and it's becoming kind of my mantra, history repeats itself, especially in sport. And there are certain patterns that play out that happen time and time again. For example, a player peaking too early and failing to back up, so really raising their level for a big victory and then losing the match after. I guess you can say Thiem did it when he beat Djokovic and then lost to Berrettini. Federer did it when he beat Djokovic and lost to Tsitsipas, not playing his best tennis. England did it in the Rugby World Cup. I'm not sure if I use this as an example, but after England had made the quarters? No, after England had won their quarters at the Rugby World Cup this year, I said that they'd beat New Zealand and lose to whoever they played in the final, because it's just so difficult to back up these big victories after you've shown your forthcoming opponent what you're capable of, and after the rest of the world now expects you to reproduce that form and be able to win. It's a real mental pressure that I don't think anyone can understand unless they're in that position. So that's one thing, but also things have happened this year, piece of history. You might remember all the videos I did on Bianca Andreescu, who I eventually predicted to win the US Open over Serena. And a big contributing factor in that was the fact that last year, Naomi Osaka, who'd won Indian Wells as a non-seeder, beat Serena Williams in the US Open final. Bianca Andreescu had won Indian Wells as a non-seeder and then beat Serena Williams in the US Open final. You can look back and there are all these things that happen again. I've already mentioned with Federer losing to an underdog in the ATP final semis, happened for the third time running against Tsitsipas. The thing is with these two, I'm not really sure I can use that as a shortcut this time, because whatever happens, history will be repeating itself from last year when Alexander Zverev won the tournament. Either a 21-year-old debut finalist who's beaten Federer will take the title, that's Tsitsipas, or the guy that has beaten both Federer and Djokovic will win the title. That was Zverev last year, that's Thiem this year. So either of them can win it and it be a repeat of history. So that makes this quite difficult. And if this was Tsitsipas versus Zverev, I'd be picking Tsitsipas to win, because I don't see someone like Zverev, who's yet to break through at a bigger tournament, backing up a tournament with this prestige anyway. Also, he's a very similar player to Elina Svitolina on the women's side, and she was defending champion at the WTA finals, made the final, and lost to Ashley Barty this year. And I'm starting to sound a bit superstitious, so I should probably get to making a prediction. Basically, I try to go with my gut instincts on these things now, because when I've been watching a tournament, gut instincts have served me pretty well. It's hard to pick one on this match when I have so many stats floating around my head. However, I've had a feeling about Stefanos Tsitsipas this tournament. He's nowhere near as accomplished as Thiem. Thiem's won Masters 1000s. Thiem's made Grand Slam finals. But at the ATP finals in recent years, that hasn't always mattered. Grigor Dimitrov won 2 years ago. Alexander Zverev won last year. Neither of them have had a breakthrough where they've made a Grand Slam final. And honestly, you can argue that Thiem deserves this win, having been so consistent all the way through the season. But I think that Tsitsipas, the stars almost seem to have aligned for him. And I can see how if Thiem brings the level he brought against Djokovic, that could be a real issue for Tsitsipas. He has lost the only 3-setter that he's played this tournament. And I do think that with the level both of these guys are capable of, and with everything that's on the line, this could be quite likely to go 3. I think I'd definitely be picking Tsitsipas to win in straight sets, but if this goes 3, it's going to test his endurance as well as his mentality. And the Nadal match is the only thing that's really done that for him this tournament. But it's late and I have to wrap up, and I think I just have to go with the feelings I've been having throughout this week as a whole, and those feelings have been that this might just be Tsitsipas' time. So as impressive as Thiem has been at moments, I'm willing to take the chance on Tsitsipas. I think if he does get it, honestly, it's most likely to be in straight sets, but there's so much potential. I think this match will probably go 3, and if it does, Thiem has so much success and so much experience that he wouldn't be a bad one to go with in that situation. But I think that if Tsitsipas is going to win, it's probably most likely to be in straight sets. So I guess I'll take a little bit of a gamble and say Stefanos Tsitsipas to win the ATP Finals 2019 in straight sets. So I can see comments coming in on the chat. Thank you to everyone who's watched live. If you're coming to this late, leave a comment. Let me know if you agree, and let me know what you think of this tournament or have thought of this tournament, because I've been genuinely really enjoying watching the tennis. It's not always been a tournament that's delivered. This was the most promising lineup in some time, and I think the younger generation are showing that they can really rise to the occasion. And as I tweeted earlier on in the week, if you follow me on Twitter, they've had some unfair stick, these guys, just because they haven't broken through at the Grand Slams where it's best of 5 sets. And they're young guys, a lot of them. Tsitsipas only 21, Zverev still only 22. It takes time really to get to the place of mental and physical endurance that's required over best of 5 sets, over 7 matches. And I'm very pleased for the younger generation this week, 2 of which are in the final, because they've shown that over best of 3 sets they can live with the big three and they can beat anyone. And I think that makes it very exciting times for the ATP. So thank you very much for watching this video. I'm sorry I took a while to get to the prediction, but there's been quite a bit of action to wrap up. Like I say, I have been taking lots of notes on the matches, and there's lots of storylines to discuss. So let me know if you'd be interested in a wrap-up video at some point next week. And I'll leave it there for now. See how this final prediction goes. We've had a decent year for finals predictions. I added them up the other day, and I think we've done 17 official finals predictions on the channel this year, and 16 of them have been correct. And the only one that was wrong was that Serena Williams disaster at Wimbledon. So compared to the last year, it's been a pretty successful year. Thank you for putting the pressure on me to keep doing these, and hopefully, I mean, I don't have favourites by any means, but hopefully we can finish the year off with a correct prediction. We will see. So thank you very much for watching, and whenever the next time may be, I will see you at the next video.